Sorry.
Go Cowboys. Sorry, it's a joke. Sorry, it's a joke. We're in Southern California. I'm sorry. Go Raiders. Go Raiders. Rams. Yeah. All right. Anyways. Okay. So let me bring out my trusty phone. Well, actually, no. I have one off the cuff. When I was talking to Pastor Shreese, this is for everybody, anyone to answer. What I've seen a lot in the past, let's say, past 6 months or so, a lot of messages about complaining. And we all know that how well complaining benefits a relationship, right? Complaining is the ultimate way to grow in a marriage, in any kind of close relationship. So if you could talk about, panel, to us, how we should stop complaining and how we can move past the hurt and the pain that have been caused in the past. I'm sorry, I was being sarcastic, but how can we move past the complaining? Because what I've seen in myself and just looking around in the world, it seems that complaining is the first thing we want to do. We want to complain about our spouse. We want to complain about our job. We want to complain about anything and everything, but not look at ourselves and not ask for help from God.
Okay, I'll say something. I think that it's really important for everyone to take ownership. I think once we start complaining, something's been missing. So maybe we're not communicating properly. And so I think that it's really important for you, or before you start complaining, is to make an assessment. Have we talked about it? Have I brought it up before? Because I think there's a lot of times that it just hasn't, and we just make the assumption that they should know because you've been married for this long, or you're 12 years old now, you should know any better, or whatever the case may be. So I think that taking a step back to maybe self-evaluate and see, have I been giving mixed messages, and take some accountability before you go out and complain.
Thank you.
I think complaining is the complete opposite of taking accountability. So if you're complaining, you're worried about other people, you're not worried about yourself. In our household, I'm a father of 3 boys and a little girl, and they're all here with me today. And it's always about, what did he not do? Or why am I doing this and she's not doing it? And this is not my job, this is his job. When you complain, it takes away all your accountability, so what you're accountable for. So in our household, there's always dishes. There's always cups. There's always dishes. And it doesn't matter if you've just finished cleaning. Someone always goes down there. And the person who just finished doing the dishes is going to complain. You know? So if you're accountable for your own actions, I think that takes away from the complaint, because who are you going to complain about? Yourself, right? So the more accountability, the less complaining, to me.
I think when I was in college, one of the professors, he was an English professor, so I'm not sure how this particular subject came up. However, something he said that's really resonated with me for years, and that is that when we're in conversation with each other and we're either complaining or whining or whatever, it's about what the other person has done. It's never about what you do. And so try always in conversation, and this is something that has really, I've taken it to heart, and I try to. Instead of complaining, I try to let my husband know, this is how it has made me feel, because it takes the accountability off of them. This is what you did, and puts it on me. This is how I feel. So he's not defensive all the time because, yeah, you did it, and how could you, instead of, I feel as if I'm not really valued right now, or I'm feeling a little upset because, and so I'm taking ownership of my feelings, and instead of saying, you've done this wrong, this is how it's made me feel. And I think it opens up the lines of communications, because the one thing that happens when we complain is it's passing the buck. But if you start off with how you're feeling, it opens up for actual conversation to take place. So,
you know, it's interesting. Complaining also can become a habit for people. I like to look at a solution rather than complaining. When I hear people complaining, I like to ask them, I like to challenge them to find a solution to the problem, because complaining is just kicking the can down the road. Or worse than that, it's just kind of a way, it's almost like a habit that people have. Everything is a problem. If it really is that bad, what are you doing about finding a way out of this thing? That's really my interest. when it comes to complaining.
Yeah, it makes me think of Elijah and Jonah. You know, definitely two Bible characters that were known more, well, not all for complaining, but definitely for some complaining, right? So what I'm hearing is maybe don't say say I statements. Don't say you statements. Take responsibility, take accountability for yourself. How can we, as parents, as adults in our homes, how can we instill that accountability, that responsibility with our children and even with ourselves?
Our pastor said it earlier, you know, that chart. Whose day is it? It's old school. In our house, it's a printout. And we've had family meetings and even having in-laws, you know, my sister-in-law living with me, and it's that chart, like, okay, who does dishes today? Or whose turn to take out the trash? Or whose turn to sweep or mop? It's there. And when people see it, it's not just some obscure idea of doing the job. It's there. It's on the fridge, or it's on. My wife has framed it, and it's framed. Their jobs, color coded.
Amen.
Yeah. So you see it.
Yeah. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. You can get the mic.
So we have our own assignments. But just like Pastor was saying, everybody, it's working. Hello? Yes. So as a child, I look at myself and I really don't want to do housework. But I have to find a solution so that my parents, as I talk and as you listen, look at yourself. What is it that is applicable to you or not applicable to you? Because we were made in the image of God, and we have to manifest that, right? Amen. But as human beings, I don't want to wash dishes. My husband knows that too. But there is a solution, like Pastor Fel was saying. How do you solve this? So what I did is, I tell my sister to do it for me, but I have to pay her so that my parents will not punish me for not doing my job. But once in a while, I'll do it, and I'll do it clean, and nobody can come in because I have to repeat it because it's the whole day job. So I have to find a solution to it, and I found a solution to it, so there will be no war. Mm-hmm. No competitiveness, no blaming. Mm-hmm. So each child, you got to listen to each child. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I went to school so long, because as my father was saying, as long as you're in school, you don't have to do any work. So I took it in heart, and I really said, well, I'm reading.
Carmen, you're a great negotiator. You really are.
That's my son telling me it's time to go.
Somebody take her mic.
Lord, praise the Lord. So we're going to keep moving forward here. Now we're in this new era, the postmodern era. You know, as adults, as parents, how can we relate to young kids? You know, obviously with the technology and the fast-paced way things are going. The fast-paced ways things are going. What are some practical tips for parents? You know, when's the best age to get the smartphone? When do we leave them alone with the computer and the internet? You know, when do we trust them at that moment? You know, those kind of things.
Maybe I can start. I have the youngest is 11 and the oldest is 18. And I think when we start off with our kids was at practice or at lessons when it was over. I don't think we wanted to give it to them or did it willingly. I think it was more of a convenience on the parents' side. Mm-hmm. And I think some of their first phones weren't the iPhones and stuff, were our old, flip phones, and said, hey, when practice is over, call us and we'll pick you up. Or, that was the initial. But nowadays, I think screen time is really, really important because we forget on those smartphones, there's YouTube on there, right? There's television shows that they're watching. There's Hulu, there's Netflix, and it goes beyond, you know, our imagination when we were kids. So screen time for them is really important. At one time, we'd take them away from them at night, and I think as they're younger, taking it away from them at night is still really important. As they get older, maybe, you know, now that teachers give homework and there's Google Docs, they have to have them. Mm-hmm. You know, I've tried to take them away, like, no, I'm going to get an F, and then they really do get an F. You know what I mean? So monitoring it and knowing, I think every time something comes up on Yahoo and there's a there's a story about something, some kid did something crazy, we see, look, if this is what happens, you know. And also at school, knowing with the kids' teachers, they know, hey, you know, there's no phones at school, and I tell the teachers, take it away if they're using it, you know. So it depends on your kids, the responsibility of your kids and how old they are. Sometimes we default, especially if they're younger, to saying, hey, watch this while we're eating, so that, you know, they're occupied or distracted. And it takes away, because when they get older, sometimes when we get home and we're eating dinner, everybody's on their phone. And it gets really, like, it's sad because we're all there, but we're not really there. Yeah. So somebody, if you have an idea, help us, because we need it.
I think that's a really touchy subject, because we're in the world of technology, and it's difficult for your children not to learn how to manage technology, because it does become part of the school curriculum and whatnot. But I think I see it as also the parents or the families. How often are you on your phone? What are you role modeling to your children? You know, are you having dinner and you're on your phone? Are you just constantly carrying your phone? Because they're going to do exactly that. And so if you're trying,
horrible example.
So if you're trying to monitor how much time they're going to be on that iPad or you know, computer, take a look at yourself, because that's where your challenge is going to come in.
I agree with you. My daughter's 9, and we had some trial and error with this iPad. Oh, boy. We just thought it was going to be the best thing in the world at first, and then it turns into those, why did I ever purchase it kind of things. And I think moderating time, as you said, is really important in our household. So, you know, when we first bought it, she was just getting used to it, and it was fine. But then all of a sudden, we realized something, that she stopped playing with her toys. She stopped, you know, doing anything creative like drawing or coloring. All she ever did was on that iPad, and everything. It was all about Roblox and Animal Jam and Minecraft. Thank you. And we couldn't get her to do anything else, and it was very disturbing for us. And so we had to take it away. I had to take it away for like a 2-week period so that she can detox. She literally needed to. It was kind of like, you know, she had to have it, and she couldn't figure out what to do with herself without it. And after that 2-week period, we realized she started actually playing with her toys, and she started opening books again, and she started, you know, she started coloring. And we realized we can't just give it to her indiscriminately. So we have to, you have 15 minutes when you get home from school to downtime, and then you need to do, you know, whatever you need to do to clean your room, whatever it is. And then afterwards, after dinner, you have about an hour, and we do have to take it away. And believe me, in the beginning, she would literally sneak into our room, oh yeah, and take it away when she thought we weren't looking. Wow. I mean, it's addictive. I understand it's part of who they are, but it really is something that I think that we, especially when they're younger, as parents, have to try and manage, because it changed my daughter's life, and not for the better. Now, because she wants to be on it all the time, I say, okay, you want to be on your iPad? Tell me all about mammals. I want 5 facts. Now that you've done mammals, I want to know about fish. You need to research the jellyfish. You want to be on it, you're going to be on it. You're going to have lots of time to be on it. But I try and manage it a little bit too.
And on the flip side, if you do want them to get something done, just the threat of taking away that phone or that iPad is very, very real. So it goes both ways.
We're not giving away the game, the strategy, are we?
No.
Okay. So just a couple of tips. In a couple months, Disney's going to release their own version of Netflix. So parents, just let you know, be careful. When Pokemon hits the Nintendo Switch, also parents, be careful. So those would be big game changers. And so we'll move past to the next subject. I want to get into personal development. You know, we talk about kids and their growth and their development. When it comes to home ministry, what is the importance of parents, adults, teachers, anyone who is an adult leader who leads children to have their own personal development?
I was raised by this church, and I've known Pastor Fell since I was 3. And I think even at the age of 10, helping out, just putting the hymnals or taking out the hymnals after church and picking up offering, the amount of trust and just seeing the leadership that they saw in me when I was one of the baddest kids coming out of Linwood Church. And just knowing that at 12 and 14, I was one of the junior deacons, and just knowing that the kids in our households, in our church, are leaders, and instilling that trust in them, or just giving them that freedom to be who they are, at the same time acknowledging that they're leaders, is really, really important, and it does wonders for them. Because some of the greatest memories, and I was just talking to Pastor Fell about this, are at the old Linwood Church. And just pathfinders, adventurers, knowing and finding out what strengths we had, right, coming out. And I remember at Pastor Fell's, one of his anniversaries here, his milestones, I told a story of, I was in grad school, and I asked for a letter of recommendation to go on a mission trip, and one of the questions was, does this applicant do drugs? And Pastor Fell honestly didn't know if I did drugs or not at that time. He answered it honestly. And I was like, man, Pastor Fell, I don't do drugs, right?
What did you do?
And
What did you do? You bet.
no, well, we were just, I don't know, coming out of Linwood, man. We're all pretty successful now, but at one point, Pastor Fell didn't know what to do with us, and Reagan was right there with us, his son. So we're a lot better now. But and he just instilled that confidence. That's what it is, confidence in us that we can be leaders at an early age. And I consider all the folks here that did help raise me, they knew that, we got to find this kid's strength. Otherwise, he's going to be doing something really bad for some bad people, and the confidence that they gave that you are a leader. Hey, you know what, at 8 years old, go pick up and stack up the hymnals, pick up the offering. And pass out at 13th Sabbath, when we had the bread and the grape juice. So the confidence, giving them the confidence, even at home. And the guy over there we met earlier, the instilling just giving them what you expectations. Mm-hmm. They're going to live up to it eventually, right? And if you expect a lot out of your kids, they want to live up to it. And leadership-wise, expect a lot from your kids. Expect a lot from your youth here, because you know what? It's the best for them.
I think that something of value is that we need to remember as adults that role modeling that's your key thing. You really get into a problem, and it's easy for humans, more than I like to admit. It's easy for humans to try to live a good life in church, and then they live the other life at home and at work. And that just isn't going to work, because for some reason you're going to mess up one day, and these kids that you see at church that you're trying to be such righteous people around are going to really see the real you. And I cannot tell you how that hurts. And you don't think kids see that, but they read you like a book. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if I have any message to say at all, is pray to God tonight that he can help you to be the real you. It's important for you to be the real you, so that wherever you are, I see one person, and that's who you really are. And hopefully we can do that, because I think that's the greatest gift that you can give as a Christian to the kids of your congregation. They need to see who you really are as a person.
I just wanted to add earlier during your session, and I think it was my brother who said about expectation, and there's so much truth to that. Your child will rise to the expectation that you have for them. And so if you have low expectation and tolerance for your children to do certain things, then they're going to do it. So it's so important, it's so critical for you to set that expectation high. Have a high standard for your children and for yourself, because they're watching all of us. And it's important, as Pastor Fell said, is to be consistent in who we really are, because our children see us not just in church, they see us at home, when you come home from work, or where you're at a family party, or all those things, and it makes an impact. They are watching.
If I say anything, I concur with everything that's said. Our children look up to us. Yeah. We may not always see that they look up to us, but they do. And so if we are really conscious of wanting our children to be more, then we have to be more. Mm-hmm. So if we want our children to be disciplined, when we go home, we too need to be disciplined. And I'm not saying this because I am. I'm saying this because I need to be. Because I can't tell you the number of times that I'm at home and I'm on the computer. My daughter will climb into bed. What you doing? She wants to know, are you playing a game or are you actually doing work? You know?
Mercy.
And it's funny, if I'm playing a game, then she's going to go into her room and she's going to get her a little iPad and she's going to lay down next to me. And for as long as I'm playing, she knows she's safe.
Yeah.
Right on.
Okay?
Yeah.
But if she comes in the room and I'm doing work, then she'll maybe come back into the room with a book and she'll read. And little things like that they take their cues from that we don't even realize that we're doing. Yes. And so, yes, it's important to have expectations for them, but it's also important to put the proper expectation on ourselves for what we need to do. Yes. When our children see us in the Word, then they're going to want to start reading. Yes. When I'm preparing for my sermon, that's when my daughter is like, well, can you tell me a Bible story? And she wants to do what I'm doing. And so if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which happens more often than not, let me just be honest, then it gives her leeway to do that too. So the expectations have to go both ways, and that's something we have to remember.
Yeah.
And I think that it was you, Cherise, I'm not sure, today maybe, or somewhere during this seminar, I heard the comment mention the fact that you have to be honest when you make a mistake and own up to it, to buy that, and to be honest. Don't try and lie to the fact, oh, I never make mistakes, because the kids know better. Just to be able to recognize the fact, they need to be able to hear, if you've blown it, that you need to make the apology. Don't be afraid, because that models for them a basic tenet of relationships is being honest with who you are and what you're doing. And I think you mentioned it a little while ago. Somewhere I heard that, but I think it's absolutely important for that to take place as far as your person is concerned.
Amen. That was awesome. I'm going to take a quick break here. Does any questions, you just raise your hand, or we'll just keep moving? Okay, we'll keep moving. So when we're talking about relationships, we're talking about being accountable for ourselves to set an example. In the spiritual context, Jesus says that we are the light of the world, right? And we need to shine so that the world can see God and give Him glory. When we talk about building up our children, encouraging them, and also have our personal development so we can be models for them, how important then is it for this generation that's coming up? And I don't even know what to call them. I'm a millennial, and I think there's some other term for the ones coming up. Is it Genesis? Oh, Gen Z. Okay, there we go. Wow. But how is it important then? How important is it that this next generation, that we model for them through Jesus Christ, through the power of Jesus Christ changing us, for them to see that so they can go out and be that light, and we can make great strides for the gospel in this world?
I don't mind starting for this one. I think that it's very important, and it's not just, it's important within the context of what we were just talking about the modeling and understanding that they have an impact and empowering them. But part of empowering them, and we're going through this within our church, and I think it happens within every church context, and that is that anytime you have a next generation and you want to empower them, the biggest way you can empower them is to create a space for them. Yes. You cannot tell them that we want you to be the leaders of the church, but sit quietly in the corner.
That's right.
You have to create space for them. You have to give them a voice. Right. And giving them a voice within the church context is the best thing we can do, because this is where they can learn to make mistakes. This is where they can learn to have their voice heard. In this context, they can learn what it is that they can offer, not just our church community, but the world. And so empowering them is something we need to do, but I think it needs to be done within the context of us creating a space for them.
Amen. Amen. Well said.
I agree. I think, in particular, this church has done a really good job with the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles, because our children are our future. And if we don't allow them to participate in different ministries and to have an active role, then they don't know what to do, or they don't want to participate. And we have examples of that with our GLOW. Our children came out, and it was just great to see them get so involved, and they look forward to it. Short calls that we make to go out to the community, where last week we went to Brookdale Elderly's residential home, and the children read their favorite story, Bible story, to them. So those are things that I think are so important, because they see that value that they bring in delivering the message in so many ways, whether it's just distributing a GLOW or going out and, bringing a smile to an elderly's face. It's just wonderful, and I think that those are just key things to teach them that this is something you can do. It's not very difficult, and starting them off as young as possible is good.
My thing is, this generation is probably the most technologically advanced generation ever. Tapping into these kids and the way they communicate could do us adults some good, because the way they process information and how quickly information goes from point A to point Z for these kids, I kid you not, if we could tap into that, this room would be super full, because the way these kids Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, the way they process information and get information about what's popular, what's important to them, it crosses boundaries. It crosses country boundaries. A kid in New Zealand knows probably what's popular in junior high in the United States just because he met somebody in the United States a few years ago, and they're still friends. So us tapping those kids, their knowledge and their resources in the new social media and all of that stuff, I think could do us adults some good, because the way we're doing stuff now is still the old way. I think, it's still, productive, but I think they're even more productive the way they communicate and the way they transfer information between each other. Yeah, that's my thing. It's not answering that question, but it kind of is.
So the church adopt memes? Is that what you're saying?
Church can adopt memes, but the way kids, if they have a favorite pastor, they know that pastor's church, and they know that pastor's live streaming from that church. Even some of the Adventist kids have favorite pastors, whether it's Hillsong or pastors in Orange County. They know on Sunday, hey, you know what, I'm going to listen to that. Or on Sabbath morning, I'll watch that pastor from the last week. But adopting some of the new technology that these kids are doing, even if it's just clips from Pastor Fell's sermon that they can watch in 3 minutes or 7 minutes, or if it's live streaming like you guys are doing here, today, which is awesome. They can be riding in a car. They can be at their friend's house. Hey, let's pop this sermon in. Oh, my church is going live right now. I'm not there, but let's watch it. Stuff like that.
Yeah. It's interesting too when we recognize the convenience of all of our social media outlets. It's amazing how much I can learn about my members by visiting every day. Every day. Now you know you better be careful what you're putting up there. What you're posting, because I really, yeah, I mean, it's just like walking right into your life. And some of you put some very interesting things up. And I love you for it. But what I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is, as adults, we really do need to tap into this kind of thing and make it useful for ourselves, because it gives us an opportunity like we've never had before. I've often wondered what it must have been like to take 6 months from St. Louis to the West Coast. You ever think about that? 10 or 12 miles a day. These people had absolutely no way to communicate whatsoever except by word of mouth until the Pony Express came along, and then the telegraph and all that kind of thing. We have instant communication today. And it seems to me like it is time for us to begin to use it. Our kids certainly use it. My grandson can, I mean, by the time he's about 2 years old, you know, his eyes were glowing at night, you know, until his mother caught on to the fact that he was doing that. And like some of you have been wise enough to do, you put some, you know, some boundaries in place. But it's really interesting to see exactly what you can do with this stuff. So I think we need to really get into knowing how to make it work, so that we can find the opportunity to share just like they share, and to share with them. It's fun because with my grandson, he and I can discuss things. We can share back and forth together, and it's fun. The generations have an opportunity to be drawn together as a result of our willingness to get involved.
So I can text message you, Pastor Fell?
Absolutely.
Respond back? Okay.
You
awesome.
go right ahead.
My dad just discovered text messaging, and
really?
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But to add to that, I think that's one of the great things about this age. If you want to have a discussion with a young person, you can just send them a text with a link to Bible Gateway or the YouVersion app, yes, and then say, hey, what do you think about it? You know, one thing we've been doing for the past 2 years is just a message group. Every week, consistently, you just send them a text and say, what do you think about it? If you need prayers, you don't always get feedback, but then when you do, it floods. Absolutely. Right? Pray for my dad, pray for my studies, and it's just, it flows and it flows.
It's great. It's great.
So we have time for 2 more questions from myself. And again, if anyone wants to ask any questions, you can just raise your hand. It's getting late. Okay, there we go.
Let's go.
Amen.
It's all right.
All right, so we're going to get a little deep, not too deep, we'll keep it PG. But with recent events, with the allegations that have been coming out of Hollywood, hashtag Me Too, I want to keep it focused within the family, though, about boundaries, teaching boundaries, living up to boundaries. What are ways that we can do that? Obviously, we ourselves having self-control, but then imparting those principles to young people. Because then the fear, though, is about the technology, that the less and less time of FaceTime, the less time you have to develop those social skills and have those boundaries and realize no means no and things like that. So how can we touch on that in this day?
Well, keeping a balance between time and technology is important, and it should be learned at an early age, because even as adults, we have a problem with that. And we may be fine. I mean, I was absolutely blown away when I learned that pornography is such a big part of people's lives, and the percentage of people within the church. I can hear a mouse climbing inside the wall. No fooling. And the problem is, we as individuals face a challenge in our own hearts, in our own minds. And having boundaries is key. We need to be able to balance. I mean, our lives are hectic enough without having addictions in our lives to add to the burden. So being able to find that balance is important. And being able to teach that balance, it's going to be very difficult if we have trouble ourselves, but we do need to teach it to the next generations because they've got lots of things that are going to be demanding their time. And early on, they need to be able somehow to deal with that. And I know of kids that have terrible grades because the balance is really off, and they're spending a lot of time with their devices. And as a result, they don't have any time to apply to their school and to the things that are really important for them. So being able to find that is key. And as adults, we certainly need to find a way. If we're having trouble, somehow we really need to get some help with that and get on that right away, because that can be a problem. And as long as we have the problem, it minimizes our ability to be influential with other generations.
I think with the advent of technology that our children have access to, it's even more incumbent upon us as parents to communicate and to communicate well with our children. One of the very first things that we had to do with Caitlin when she started with this Animal Jam was, you know, these little friends, they pop up and they talk to you. And sometimes some of the things they say aren't the best there, even among kids. And cyberbullying is a real thing. And cyber shaming is a real thing. And we have to teach our children, not everyone who says they want to be your friend online is your friend. The first thing we talked about is that even though it says friend there, or even though they said that they're Courtney and they're 9 years old and they live in Australia, I said they could be a big fat woman in you know, right next door and saying who they are. You don't know who it is that you're talking to, so you need to be very aware of things that you can and you can't say online, things that should be said and shouldn't be said online, and create a space that they can come to you and say, so that once or twice she has come to me, you know, and somebody said that I was, you know, I did something wrong, and I have to say, wait a minute, you know, let's look at this. The parameters on this need to be changed, and making sure that we communicate the value that our children should have. You know, you don't allow anyone to say anything to you just because they have the availability to text you. There are people that you can unfriend. Not everyone on Facebook is your friend, and it's okay to unfriend. Children need to know that. We need to teach them their value, what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, so that they don't have to feel ashamed of not, you know, not listening or if they don't want to be your friend, if you don't want to be their friend, if they're doing something that is not acceptable for you, you let somebody know, you tell somebody, you unfriend them, you do whatever you need to do. Because too many kids these days, it's a real thing with suicide and depression, and so much is going on because of what is online that we can't always control. So we have to communicate.
I think, just piggybacking on that, I think it's also important for you to monitor what are they on. You know, having their password if they have an Instagram account or whatever they're on. It's important for you to do that. You know, find out who are they befriending, who's befriending them. Because you're right, there's so many people who are disguised as other children and they're not. So it's very important when you're setting those boundaries that you remember that you have to be accountable as well. Because if you're allowing them to have a phone, to have access to games and whatnot, you know, are they appropriate? Yeah. You know, are they appropriate for your child? Because that's what they're going to be on. The minute you give them that red light, they're going to take it. They're off with it. So making sure that those boundaries are clear, informing them, preparing them, but also monitoring what they're watching, what they're on. You don't just accept every friend because they said it's a friend. Mm-hmm. And even, you know, define what a friend is, mm-hmm. right? A friend is not just someone you just meet off the street, right? Social media and all of that is the same.
Change the idea of friend. Social media is completely.
So just one thing to piggyback on that from a tech standpoint. Also, you can always be the confirmation email address for your kid's account. You know, don't let them make their own email address and use that to sign up for an Instagram account. It can be your address, and that way you can monitor all that interactions. Because if they try to change your email address, you'll get a notification. If they try to change the password, you'll get a notification. Shut it down. So.
Up until last year, we had a family Bible study group with about 10 families. And I found out that the best way to get information about my kids was from their friends. And even though my kids won't be friends with me on Instagram or Snapchat, their friends would. And, you know, I find out, you know, from their friends, and it's not snitching. I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, they'll tell me. Yeah, Brandon likes this person, or Daniel or Drew, you know. And same thing with them. It's easier for them to talk to their friends' parents sometimes, you know, all in that same group, about different things. And you know, when they say it takes a village, it really takes a village, because sometimes they're more comfortable with talking to Uncle Meshach about something. You know, and Meshach's kids more comfortable talking to me about other stuff. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because I'll get, you know, even some of my clients' parents are friends with my kids, and they're like, oh yeah, man, Drew's doing this, he's doing that, man, real proud of him. And I'm like, oh, great. He didn't block you? And I'm like, he's like, no. You know, but, you know, it's cool, you know, because he is 18. But at the end of the day, you know, just monitoring that is different. I think the teaching moment, going back to the Me Too stuff, all of the stuff that's happening, those are all teaching moments. You know, turning it off in the car or changing channel, I think all of that stuff, being a father of 3 boys and a little girl, it's real tough because, you know, nowadays, what is consent? Oh, you know, I hold somebody's hand. Oh, you know, that's assault. You know, just even touching someone now. So it's different, and it's not assumed that, you know, everybody's there for doing things for the right reasons. So for them, teaching moments, how to treat your mom, how to treat your sister, your grandma, is how you should be treating, you know, some of these girls. And then also talking about things that you normally don't talk about. I think it's a younger and younger age. You know, you have to tell these kids, especially when they're having sleepovers at 10, 11, 12 at their friends' houses. So it's always a teaching moment. I think this generation knows about it. They know what's going on. You know, us older generation, you know, we kind of, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about it. Now these kids are like, hey, yeah, man, we got to talk about it. You know, I want to hear about it. I want to hear it from my parents rather than someone else.
Just one more thing. I think as parents, you just have to be aware of what's going on out there. You know, a lot of time, you're right, with this generation, they know, they're not afraid to say things. They're just being exposed to so much sooner than maybe we would like them to. So it's important as a family to be aware of what's going on. If your children are on social media and you have other family, they're monitoring that, you know? Right? It's important. Hey, did you know? Right, watch my kid. Let me know. Because, you know, it does. It takes a village, and that's important. It is important to understand that. But just, you know, be aware of what's going on. Inform yourself. Because if you don't, or you think your children don't know, they know. They know.
All right, we're going to start to close it down. I actually have one more small question that I really wanted to get out. But, you know, when we go home tonight, what's a good place to start in the Bible with our family? If, let's say, we haven't done any worship in a long time, we want to, where's a good place to start in the Bible for that?
I talked to my brother today, and he didn't even know what person in the family bought his son this one book. I think going to the ABC or going to the bookstore, there's tons of resources out there. And then if you have older kids online, you know, the Bible Gateway stuff that's on there. The conference or the North American division makes some really good stuff. You know, just starting with the Sabbath school lessons and even the guides and all of these things. We have awesome resources. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of stuff out there. And just, you know, going from that, because we grew up on that stuff. And all of that stuff is great. All those resources are great. We have Sabbath school lessons you can do online. It updates weekly. You know, just doing that, just starting there, I think is great. We have the resources, and it's free. Yeah.
I think prayer, going home and maybe just starting with a prayer is always good, you know, having that family time where you can just do it as a family. You're role modeling, you're making Jesus primary in your life and just showing. It doesn't take much, something quick, something easy. It could be done at any time. is very valuable.
We have some beautiful translations too that are friendly to the younger mind, and helping to sit down and just spend some time. I think of nothing more than the Clear Word. Clear Word is a very, very easy translation to look through. You go through the Gospel of John. John is an interesting gospel because it's different than the other gospels in the sense that John was writing in a time when the old dudes of that first generation are just about all died off. The disciples are all gone, the original apostles. He's the only one left. And he's hoping somehow to be able to energize the next generation who will take the reins of the church. And it's interesting if kids understand that his gospel is written with that in mind. That kind of fits them because that's what we're hoping they're going to be able to do for us. We're dying off, and we're hoping that we can put the reins of the church into their hands and to be able to see Jesus as he really was, and to be able to realize that Jesus has been my friend. I want him to be your friend as well. Let's sit down together and let's really get a good view of him. Let's get a feel of who he was. Let's connect with him. And that would be my hope.
I think that everybody here likes a good story. In the Bible, the one thing that is so amazing about this Bible is that it is authentic. God was not trying to hide the dirty laundry underneath the carpet. He gave real life examples. And so as a family, sometimes it's really good to look to the Bible for stories of real families. And you know what? There's something about reading about the family that is more dysfunctional than you that sometimes just gives you hope. Let's just be honest, okay? You know, start with something like Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Esau, where you have things like deceit and favoritism and alliances and, you know, just people trying to get over on each other, and then maybe read those kind of stories together as a family and say, hey, what can we learn from this? How do we not make the same mistakes from them? And also to show your children that families aren't perfect. Even biblical families had real problems. And maybe that will give you hope and encouragement from a biblical perspective that we are not here to be perfect people. We are not here to be perfect families because God used these broken, vulnerable, imperfect people. And if he used them, he can use us. So what can we learn from this? Go to the stories of the Bible. And, you know, if you need stories of hope, I just preached on Ruth today. What an amazing story about a family dynamic where love never gives up. The Bible is full of stories that can teach us how to be better. I think we need to take advantage of those stories.
Excellent.
Lastly, real quick, I call my kids like Pastor Daniel, Pastor Brandon, Pastor Drew in the house, especially when it's their turn to lead out, even if it's just prayer. You know, just hearing that title connected to their name, I think, you know, they may not be pastors, but in our house, he's pastoring, they're pastoring to their parents or pastoring to their brother and sister. Just little things like that, calling your kid, you know, Pastor Katie, you know, it does wonders, and it lights them, they light up a little bit, and it's a lot of fun when they're leading out and they're in charge.
That's good. That's good.
All right, we're going to close there. We just want to, let's just give a praise to the Lord and just thank the wonderful panel that we had here. Thank you, Pastor Feld. Thank you, PG Nate. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Pastor Sharice. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of you for being here. This is going to conclude the panel. We'll have a prayer, and then we will have some food in the gym. We're going to hang out, have a small movie night. We're showing War Room, so that's going to be amazing, and we'll have some board games, okay? So thank you. God bless you. Let's have a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, God, again, we are so amazed and thankful for all this wonderful talk that we've had just now, Lord, that we can come together in fellowship and learn from each other and hear the wisdom that you've imparted to all of us. Lord, again, we ask that you continue to keep that in our minds, keep it present, and Lord, change us and save our homes, Father, and come soon. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. God bless.